Welcome to Business Buzz and today's discussion on people you want to meet. The topic is, can you be a toilet paper entrepreneur? My guest today, Michael Michalowicz, is one of a kind. I asked him to come on the show because his philosophy and advice about how to become an entrepreneur flies in the face of conventional wisdom about starting a business. But surprisingly, I thought his ideas were worth talking about. Michael's book, The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, is hilarious and at the same time blunt and forceful. There are some good lessons to be learned. I'm putting him in the hot seat today to ask him some questions about women entrepreneurs. Listeners, a brief description of your entrepreneurial career.
Susan, so my background is probably not the typical entrepreneurial career. I wasn't silver spoon. I didn't have an entrepreneurial family, nor was I the other extreme where I grew up in a very, humble, unprivileged background and I had something to prove. It's a very middle-class upbringing. But how I got started was after college, I couldn't get the job I wanted, working for like a big six accounting firm. And what I did instead was work at the local computer store. That's the only job I could get. And I one night went out for some drinks after working there for about 2 years. I went with one of my associates that worked along with me, and we were talking how bad our job was and how the entrepreneur that owned that business, how he was making millions off of our sweat and how much smarter I was than him and all that. And with enough of that beer in me, I said, well, I'll start my own business. I can become a millionaire overnight if I just do what he does, and I'm smarter anyway. So partially in a inebriated state, I quit the next morning to start my own version of a computer store, setting up computers for people. And I wasn't an overnight success like I thought. That's how entrepreneurship worked. But I wasn't. It took me 8 years. But after 8 years of just plugging away at it and doing some atypical things that you don't read about, I was able to grow the business into a multi-million-dollar company and sold it. Then I was fortunate enough to start another company. 3 years later, I sold that one to a Fortune 500 and then started my third business, which grew extremely quickly, and I'm operating it today. So that's kind of my story.
So would you, as advice to young entrepreneurs who are starting out in their first business, would you advise them that this is an easy way to go quickly and start a career, or would you say that sometimes you need to go through a bunch of hoops and jumps, figure out what it is you need to do to make it work in order to be successful?
Yeah, it is absolutely a bumpy, challenging ride. And the problem, Susan, is we see the front page of Inc. magazine, the cover, and you see these super successful people like Mark Zuckerberg. He's 18 years old. He's a billionaire. It's so easy. He just had this little concept and dropped out of college, and now he's a billionaire. And we see lots of these stories of these overnight successes. The thing is, those stories aren't real in regards to they're not typical. I mean, they're real. They really happened. But those people, it's like winning the lottery. You hear about it, but if you play the lottery, the chances of you or me ever winning is nearly zero. So the real path of an entrepreneur is much more of a struggle. It's a lot more dirty. There's a lot more sweat and tears than you'll ever read about. But if you stick to it and you're willing to learn from your failures and mistakes, there is potential for good success and maybe even great success. But no one should expect that you start a business and you're going to be successful overnight. You should plan to start a business and you're going to be struggling and you're going to have to fight for every inch you get. If you stick to it for years, sometimes decades, the returns will be tremendous.
And do you think that anybody who has that passion and can follow some of the guidelines in your book, which we'll talk about today, do you think they can ultimately become a toilet paper entrepreneur?
Yeah, so what I define as a toilet paper entrepreneur is that second scenario, not the overnight success, but these people that plug away at it. No, I don't think everyone can be an entrepreneur because there's a lot of stick-to-itness. There is a lot of commitment. There's a lot of sacrifice. If you want to be successful, from my experience, you have to put the hours in. You have to be able to take the beat down from the customer that you don't necessarily like so much, but it's the only source of income right now. So there's a lot of sacrifice you have to make. I do believe, anyone that has the desire, the thirst, should at least satisfy that and try it out. But if it doesn't work out for you and you can't do it or don't want to do it, that's okay because you've tried. I think the only failure is someone that doesn't try. But if you do try it, yeah, sorry.
Do you think without passion that the try is going to be a half-act attempt, or do you really need to have this fire and this passion, as I believe I did, and I certainly believe you did, when you decided to plunge into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, passion is an absolute must. But I think there's a misnomer that goes around. A lot of people say, to be successful, you must be passionate. And therefore, people equate passion equals success. But the truth really is passion brings about persistence. So the more passionate you are about what you do, your craft, the more persistent you'll be. That brings about stick-to-itiveness. And it's that persistence that ultimately brings about success. So if you're passionate, you can't stamp that on your forehead, I will be successful. That's not enough. Passion just brings about the ability and the desire to keep at it long enough to become successful.
And in your experience, one of the things in my book, Briefcase Essentials, that I pick as one of the 12 essentials that women have is the ability to be persistent, damn persistent. I mean, we just keep going. We just don't stop. If we have a goal in mind, we're going to keep going till we achieve it. And do you see that characteristic of persistence in some of the women that you've observed, that you talk about in your book, and ones that you're actually launching new ventures with right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work with a lot of women, and I work with a lot of men too. But I've noticed a distinct difference in how women entrepreneurs and male entrepreneurs behave. And the women entrepreneurs I work with are absolutely persistent. And how they're running their businesses, if I can use a baseball analogy, is they consistently are trying to get on first base, trying to get, just hit that ball, get on first base. A lot of the guys I work with seem to more aggressively be going, I got to hit one for the fences, but they're striking out a lot more. And the funny thing is, in the economy, of 10 years ago, if you swang for the fences and just nicked the ball, you were getting on base and probably going pretty far. It was a very hospitable environment, the economy, for an entrepreneurial startup. So swinging for the fences worked. Now, it's a lot more struggle starting a business. It's a whole different game. The economy isn't so welcoming anymore. And the people that are doing better are the ones that are taking clear, smaller steps, but definitive steps. They're hitting to get on base, hitting to get on base, and over time willing to, score runs just by getting on base consistently. And I've noticed, at least with the women entrepreneurs I work, they take much stronger small steps, and the guys are trying to take big leaps, and it's not working out. So the persistence women have in making these smaller steps consistently and relentlessly is really paying off.
Well, and in my experience as a businesswoman, that's how I found that I was successful. I wasn't looking to hit a home run every time I got up to base. I was looking to just move the needle a little bit and take it cautiously and more conservatively. And women are more conservative. Most women are less risk takers than men are. And but it's kind of like the tortoise and the hare, the tortoise gets there and gets to the finish line, and that's what's important. And women have this quality, this stick-to-itiveness, this persistence that really comes with the territory. It's innate, apparently, in most of the women that I've interviewed and most of the women I've talked to and books that I've read. So it's here. It's a talent that we have. So we need to realize how great that talent is and how effective that talent will be in achieving entrepreneurship and getting out there and getting a business going. Because that one quality, in your book, there's several others that resonate with me, but that one really stuck out in the beginning, that persistence was really the key to going to the first, second, or third base. And without that, you just don't get there.
Yeah. There's another thing that I identify as a differentiator that really women are exploiting well, and it's working very well in this economy. And what it is that I just observed my own behavior, and every time I grew my businesses, it really, if I look at the core essence of my emotion, it boiled down to chest pounding. How many trophies did I have, and how loud could I pound my chest to show my success? So as my businesses grew, so did the the quality of my cars and the quantity of my cars and the size of my house. And it was all about the one-upsmanship. And as I look at myself, introspectively, that really plays into kind of the male mindset. It's about what I call compete and destroy. How can I beat all my local competition, show that I'm superior and better, and pound my chest? And if I'm really lucky, I can destroy their business, and I can take all their clients, and that's the ultimate success. But I think the female perspective, from my observations, is different, and it's more complementary to how entrepreneurship is today. And while men are, from my vantage point, compete and destroy, women are all about including and elevating. And what I mean by that is I think women's social significance is judged differently. For a male, my significance is about how many trophies do I have. A female, I think, their significance is determined by how influential are they among their friends, how important are they among their community. And the more significance they have in their community, the more self-worth they have, as opposed to a male perspective where it's the stuff I've collected, the more self-worth I have. So from a women's vantage point, if my assessment's true, from a women's vantage point, women entrepreneurs are better served by having social significance, which is achieved by giving. The more they contribute to their community, the more they give to their community, the more their significance increases, and therefore the more their self-worth increases. So a woman's approach to entrepreneurship is a lot more about building a social network. And I'm not saying, putting out the olive branch, but really reaching out to vendors, maybe even competitors, and saying, how can we work together to complement each other and elevate both our businesses for our clients to both have an elevated, better experience with both our companies? So I see a lot better networking, a lot better social connectivity with female entrepreneurs, male entrepreneurs, and it's really working in this current environment.
Well, and how I describe it, it's similar, but it's slightly different. And I describe it in my book, and I talk about it all the time. It's that women are relationship builders. They like to build relationships. They like to help other people. That's true. Everything that you've described is correct about how they like to be in a community. They like it as a teamwork. They don't like to be individuals and have everyone shine the spotlight on them and say, oh, aren't you great? Aren't you incredible? Aren't you the best in the whole world? It's not necessary. They don't need that. What they need is a feeling that they're contributing to society and community. And when you own a business, and when I own several of them, what I found is that when I looked at building a company and building it bigger and bigger, when I had decisions about relocating a plant and destroying that community relationship, I had a hard time doing it. And in fact, I couldn't do it. I shut one plant down, and I built a big company that was kind of about the size it could go where it was, and my decision was not to move it, to leave it in that community, because women have this instinctual feeling that they should try to provide the greatest benefit to the greatest numbers. And the unfortunate thing in our society that really gets me ticked and gets me crazy is that women are underestimated and undervalued, and no one really understands, unless they've been there, as you have, what women really bring to the table. And what they bring, hopefully, by greater presence of women entrepreneurs, is a greater awareness that there is a better way to do this. It's not just about buying stuff. It's really about contributing and making a difference and giving something back. And I believe most business women, believe that this is what they need to do in life. That's their mission. It's not just about having a huge profit and taking it home and throwing it around. It's really about the greater good. And it seems corny, but I believe it's real.
No, I think it is real. Yeah. The challenge I think that some women entrepreneurs are experiencing, they are placing on themselves. Because I've worked with some women, they come up and they say, I just can't compete with the guy. I have a competitor, it's a male-driven business, he's so driven, I just can't compete. And I think it's a failure. I think it's a bad way of looking at it when you say that I can't compete when you're considering playing in their ball field. I think women entrepreneurs are better served, and I've worked with a few like this that say, I can't compete. I don't compete. I play the game differently. And when you realize it's not about trying to replicate what the guy entrepreneur is doing and do it better than him, it's really about doing it differently, and that's what excels. those are the women entrepreneurs that I've noticed that really take off. So, I encourage any woman that thinks that they can't compete or they're considering themselves not to have the same assets or capabilities as another entrepreneur, particularly a male entrepreneur, recognize not about competing one-on-one, it's about playing the game differently, and then you can excel and be far ahead of everyone else.
Well, this is a point that I'm in absolute agreement with in my book called Briefcase Essentials, because what I say is don't do it like a man. Women don't need to do it like a man, and it's not effective when you do it like a man. You need to bring your own skill set to the table. And that skill set, which includes persistence in a boatload, is you have plenty of skill sets that really set you apart. And you don't have to be the same. You don't have to be a mimic. You want to be different. And certainly in your career, you've been different. You've brought a different understanding and really the sense of emotion to the table about entrepreneurs that I think is really helpful, because it takes all kinds. It doesn't take any one particular kind to be successful. It takes all kinds. And women certainly have the right stuff to be successful if they use their own skill set and not try to mimic what a man does.
Absolutely.
If we took the women's skill sets one at a time, I'll throw a few out, and then you give me your reaction to what you think, how women stack up to men in these particular skill sets. In terms of taking risk, what do you think the difference is?
Well, I think women in general are more risk adverse. I mean, they avoid risk more in general, what I observe. The reason behind it, I think, is because women are moving more as packs and groups. So they see the consequence of taking a risk as inflicting the community as a whole. Maybe your example of moving a plant, I think from a woman's perspective, I can totally understand that if you move the plant, you're looking at all the consequences for the community that you're influencing as a whole. Then, on the other hand, for me, when I look at the risk, I say, what's the potential threat to myself? And I'm excluding my community. And maybe it's more of a selfish standpoint. So I think risk, for a male, bring the risk on. And I evaluate it on a very personal level, and I think women are measuring it as a whole. So I think the way that women can manage it is to recognize that and then involve the people you're influencing with the risk decision. Don't just hold it in yourself. Communicate it. Discuss it. See how other people's feedback will, and use that strength you have in building communities and working with communities to influence the way you're going to address the challenge you're facing.
What about communication? Who do you think is a better communicator, males or females?
Women.
And can you give me some examples?
Well, yeah, I can give you an example in the social networks online. I do a lot in the social arena, and I notice from my own trend that inevitably I'm out there pumping my stuff. Buy my stuff is how I communicate. But I look on the Twitter feeds and Facebook feeds, and I don't see women doing that nearly as much as buy my stuff. Instead, they're like, here's how I can help. Here's a resource I found. So I think women naturally are far superior communicators and in building social networks, both online and offline.
Well, they do it more subtly. It's hard for women to be self-promoters. They just aren't comfortable with it. And men are born self-promoters, so it kind of works that way. And I think that women communicate in a way that's very effective. It may take longer. It may be slower. It may be more methodical. It may be more pragmatic. But that communication is very worthwhile. And what I bring up in my book that hopefully you'll read it when I send it to you, is that there's all kinds of different senses that women are able to observe in other people at the same time, whether it's their body language, whether it's the tone of their voice, whether it's their facial expressions. And they're very observant of that. So when they have a meeting and they walk away, and you'll see this in your launches, I'm sure, they'll come back and they'll give you a very rich picture of who that person was and how they believe they can approach them. And it'll be a very different view than what you come away with from your observation, because men are much more broad brush, and they look at it more angular than we do. We kind of look at we try to find every pimple on their skin and take it apart. And that's just the way it is. And that's a good thing, because it allows you to evaluate who your targets are and what you need to do to be able to be successful in selling them.
Yeah. I guess I get to build on that. I agree with your observations 100%. And I see one challenge, though, that when I work with women, women can identify a lot more of what's going on, a lot more of the periphery information. The challenge is, if I can use the analogy of kind of peeling back the onion, a guy will peel back one skin level and start going. A woman, many women entrepreneurs I work with peel back a skin level, peel back more, peel back more. Sometimes they peel back so much there's nothing left to eat. So the one cautionary note to female entrepreneurs out there is bring it back a few levels, but at a certain point you do have to make the decision to move ahead and proceed, because if you keep peeling it back, you're dead in the water. There's nothing left.
Right, and there, to get to the essence, you don't have to peel the whole onion, I guess is the message, right?
That's the message, yeah. You don't want to peel the whole onion.
You don't want to peel you want to leave some of the onion left, and you want to just get to the essential part of it, the part that you need to be able to succeed in that particular area. And that's great advice. Any other skills that you can think of that you've observed in women that stand out to you?
Well, women read the emotional side well, and I think this is really important today in building businesses, bringing on employees. Skill sets used to be it. I'd look at the resume. If you have the skills, you have the commitment, great. Come on board, and I'm going to get you working. It's much more of a manufacturing type of system. We have a product or a service to produce, come in and be a line worker. I think the environment's changed, and I think we're not as well served as entrepreneurs by bringing in people that can just do it. Because after all, the experience is the only thing we can teach them. We can tell people how to do the work that needs to be done, but we can't teach them how to have the right amount of intelligence. We can't teach them how to have a good attitude. We can't teach them energy. And I think women have a skill set in really identifying the underlying values of people and getting to the root of what a person's about. There's an intuition that I just know I don't have. So I think women entrepreneurs in particular should exploit that and identify, when they bring on employees, the employees that fit the culture, that have the right attitude, have high degrees of intelligence and energy. And then when you bring those people on, they're going to be such a fluid fit that teaching them the skills of what they need to do is going to be a no-brainer, and you're going to have a very efficient, effective organization. I think that's a strength women have.
Well, I agree that women have that strength, but I've never looked at it the way you've just identified it, that the ability to be able to understand people and really go to kind of their essence is really important to make sure that when you bring staff on at an executive level or an administrative level or even managerial, that they're a good fit for your organization. And it's not just widgets. And, women certainly are able to analyze people and have a gut feeling for what's going to work and what isn't. And I've had it. I've made some mistakes. I'd say my gut's about 98%, but 2% of it could be very ugly. Because I could make a really bad decision and have to live with it for a while and keep kicking myself to say, how did I do that? Why did I do that? But most of the time, it works. If you had to describe or define or rate the kind of entrepreneur that you talk about and describe in yourself and in your book, Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, do you think the prototype of either gender, male or female, makes a better entrepreneur in your view, your type of entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think male-female is irrelevant. I think there is some macro influence, like the economy. I really do think women are better suited right now to be entrepreneurs than males. I think that will change over time. But there's an internal nature that you have to have regardless of your sex that really determines if you'll be successful. And this is what it is. It's the ability to ask better questions. It's really that simple. Because a lot of people ask the wrong questions, and it hurts their progress. For example, a bad question is, why am I always unsuccessful? Why do I have troubles with this? Why do I always have a bad client? Why am I having problems? And our brains are tuned in to always answer the questions asked of it. That's why when we're in the shower and all of a sudden that answer pops in our mind, it's because our mind constantly has been working on an answer we've asked a while ago, and then it just pops into it. Well, if we ask a bad question, the bad answers are going to come back. Why do I have problems? And then all of a sudden it pops in my mind, well, because I didn't have a good education, and there's my answer. Why do I pick bad clients? Well, because this business environment only allows bad clients to come my way. The key to being a successful toilet paper entrepreneur, a real scrapper that turns and goes big, is simply enabling good questions. Instead of saying, why me, why am I struggling, saying, how can I overcome this obstacle? What can I do that would move my business 2 to 3 times the level of performance it is right now? How can I bring in more revenue? How can I identify the best clients and have them begging to come in and work with me and use my services and my product? And by asking those good questions to great questions, the results are significant change in your behavior because good answers come in, you start executing on it. And by the way, I'm just not making this up. This is actually how Bill Gates built Microsoft. Bill Gates did not say, how do I develop software for a computer? A okay question, good question. Instead, his question, he talks about this in his biography, he asked, how do I write a software program that will be put on every computer on this planet? And that's a great question. And the answer came to him in Windows, and the rest is history.
Right.
So male, female is irrelevant. Good question is what's the relevant part.
Now, one of the things that I really liked about your book and that I thought was a tremendous insight that we all talk around, but we don't really nail it, and I thought you nailed it, was that you really need to understand yourself before you can ever become successful as an entrepreneur. And that's not just a fluffy understand yourself. It's really getting down to the basic of who you are and what you're about. And can you give me some information on how you think people can get to that depth of that level? I know I got there, but I don't know that I could advise anybody else on how they can get there.
Yeah, no, it's tough. It is really being introspective. But here's how I've done it. The first thing you have to recognize is if you are not being yourself to your fullest, you're really playing a game. You're really accommodating to other people's agendas. And a lot of us feel intimidated. If I don't behave the way I'm expected to behave, people aren't going to like me. So the first step is to recognize that's actually wrong. People will like you more when you're yourself to your fullest because you're then identified as a leader. Leaders are the ones that stand out and are willing to be themselves 100%, and then people that aspire to be like that person follow them. So the first step to finding out who you are is to recognize it's not just okay to be yourself. You have to be yourself to be successful. You have to be yourself to the fullest. Then you just have to become a great observer of when are the times you're the happiest. And inevitably, when you are the happiest, the most fulfilled, is when you're executing on the true you. So I think back every day of my life when I can. At the end of the day, I sit back and say, what was the happiest moment today? Sometimes it was, quite frankly, I sit in front of the TV and just enjoying a glass of wine and laughing. But then I ask myself, what am I laughing at and what turned me on? Well, there's this one program called Mythbusters that does all this experimenting and stuff. And they have some funny elements. I really like the nature of experimenting and the fun stuff. Like, maybe that points to my curiosity side, my interest in experimenting and testing things out. And I look with my friends, what are the subjects that I can go on about forever and ever? And instead of getting tired, I actually become more energized, and my friends start rolling their eyes because I can't shut up. What are the subjects? That's probably the true me. And maybe it's entrepreneurship, or maybe it's more around curiosity and stuff like that. And, I do this about all aspects of my life, and then a crystal clear vision starts coming out on who I am and what gives me energy and happiness. Once I define that, then I really start knowing who the true me is. And the final step when it comes to business is now how do I manifest who I am into a business that actually can sustain and grow?
Well, and I think if those who are listening pick up your book and read it, I think they will see you've kind of described it in a very good way, and you take them through steps. And I think that they will be able to read that and get a lot out of it and understand how you went through the process of identifying who you really are and becoming who you really are and not who you thought you should be through somebody else's eyes.
Yeah, just to build on that, I talk about in the book, I talk about immutable laws. And I think this is really relevant to defining who you are. Immutable laws, quite frankly, it's the term I gave to it because I think immutable sounds so strong. But this is the same thing as core values we hear floating around. And if you really dig into it, though, it's important. Now, I'll give you 2 examples of immutable laws I have for myself because I think they'll point to how I've defined my character and who I am. The first thing is I always hear about give to get. If you want to get something, you got to give. And it always just felt wrong. Every time I heard give to get, it felt wrong to me because it sounded a little bit manipulative. If I was giving something, it sounded like there was an underlying kind of It's the thing, I'm trying to really get something out of it. I said, gosh, I'm really about give to give. When I do something, to give to something, I get appreciation out of the action of giving. That's where my fulfillment is. And if nothing comes in return, that's cool. That's not what I expect anyway. I like the appreciation. I appreciate giving. So I said, wow, my immutable law is not give to get, it's give to give. So I came up with this, and this now has become kind of a rule and a guiding system for me. And everything I do in my life, when I meet people, I figure out, are they doing something because they just appreciate what they're doing, or are they doing something because they're manipulators? Because if they're manipulators, I don't want them in my life, and I don't think I bring value to their lives either. So I'm looking for give to givers. Another kind of rule I defined for myself, another immutable law, I call no dicks allowed. And what I mean by this is life really is too short to deal with a dick. Someone that takes advantage of others, someone that just is all out for themselves, forget it. And if I behave that way, and admittedly at times I behave that way, I kick myself in the gut constantly. I cannot let myself down from that. So I make sure that I adhere to that rule, and then I don't allow people in like that. And by having this rule and being so committed to it, in my business, I was able to manifest it into a brand. And now a lot of people, I've been very fortunate, have followed the Toilet Paper Entrepreneur brand because it has those laws of give to give. It's constantly giving. It has those laws of no dicks allowed. We're here to have fun, but we're not going to, no one's taking advantage of anyone else. So I think we all have these immutable laws. We just need to write them down and live by them.
And I think most of us know what our immutable laws are, and I think we can write them down and can live by them and keep them by our desk and take a look at them and not divert from that, because then if that's truly what you believe, that's what you need to live by, and that's what makes you happy if you live by your rules and the rules that you believe are right for you and right for your community. If our listeners want to contact you and inquire about launching their company with you or just getting in touch with you for some other business opportunity, how can they do that?
Yeah, so the best way is come over to our website. It's chock full of information, free resources, and you can definitely get hold of me directly. And the website is toiletpaperentrepreneur.com. It is a mouthful, so just go to Google, give your best spelling at that, and you'll find it. My name is Mike Michalowicz. You can find out more about me also on that site. And Amazon, or you can go to your local Barnes & Nobles, has the book if you want to check that out too.
And all those listings will be on the web, will be on this show for those who listen, and they'll see your website notations, your links, and everything else. So you'll have that. If they go to the show, they'll also see it. Is there anything that you need to tell our listeners that you haven't told them yet, except a whole lot, which you can come back for? But is there anything that you feel that we've missed right now that we need to maybe double back on?
Well, the only thing I want to add is I call it the call to action. And I think anyone listening in, if you said something or I said something that resonated with them, they have the responsibility to start moving on it now. If you heard a little tip or idea that you think, wow, I could use that, start doing it. Because the problem I hear with so many people is the ultimate mañana syndrome. They hear something and say, it's great, I'm going to jump on it tomorrow, but tomorrow life comes in the way, and they never get to it. So, if you feel you haven't started a business yet and you want to, form an LLC and do it today. If you heard that one tip that will improve your business, try it out, but try it out today so it doesn't go by the wayside. That's my final tip.
Well, that's our show for today. If you have any comments or questions about today's show, you can email me, and if I use your comment on the air, I will send you an autographed copy of my book, Briefcase Essentials. My next show features a very successful corporate executive who left the corporate world to start her own business. I will be asking her this question: what does it take to start your own business? So until next time, I've been there and done that, and now it's your turn.